Shall we begin?
Hey YouTube friend, Ben Ochart here. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as you can see, I'm suffering through a difficult winter here in Southern California. At any rate, I just wanted to speak with you today about stocking a tank. One of the questions I get asked most often is, how many fish can I put into, and you fill in the blank, 75 gallon, 100 gallon, and you know, the truth is that there is no one answer fits all. And you know, I have a variety of tanks. I mean, if you follow my channel, you know I have this 150 that you would consider a very lightly stocked tank, especially when you consider the amount of filtration I have going on. I have a sump with a pump that's rated at close to 2,000 gallons per hour, which of course you lose a little bit with the lift and everything else with the head pressure. But there's also a Sun 704B on there, rated at over 500 gallons per hour. So there's a lot of water turnover in this 150, and yet you see I have it very lightly stocked. There's a lot of room for more fish there, and more fish will be eventually moving into that tank. If you look at the 100 gallon, you would say that that's a well-stocked or maybe even an overstocked tank. And of course the 60 at this point is pretty lightly stocked when you look at the size of fish, the amount of swim space, things of this nature. So I have a cross section, and I'll tell you, here are the 5 points that I would consider. And to make sure I didn't miss them, I actually wrote some of them down because these are important to me. I get asked this question so much that I would love to be able to just give folks a link when they ask it. And so first point is your filtration. What kind of filtration are you going to put on that tank? So before I can give you a number or a guess, we have to talk about filtration. On this 150, you can see here, there's a sump, as I mentioned, and a Sun 704B. That's a lot of water movement. Oh, compare that to the 100, which is a pretty heavily stocked tank. And what I have there is simply a Fluval FX6. Now granted, that thing has tremendous pressure and turns over a lot of water. But, you know, someone might consider that tank to be lightly filtered. But you have to consider what kind of filtration you're going to be using. Now, if you're going to be running a 100 gallon with a hang-on back filter, and that's it, maybe a sponge inside, you're not going to be able to stock that much. If you're going to be running a couple Fluval FX6s and maybe even backing them up with a hang-on back, yeah, you're going to be able to put more fish in there, because you're going to have greater water turnover, better filtration, and certainly a lot more area for beneficial bacteria to colonize and help that nitrogen cycle. So what kind of filtration you can be putting on that tank? It's not just the size of the tank, but also the filtration. Another point is number two. Number two is maintenance. What is your schedule like? Look, if you have a job that requires you to put in 12-hour days and often work weekends, you know, some of the clients that I consult in my day job are CPAs. You know, CPAs from mid-January till April 15th, they rarely even see their families. I mean, a person like that, owning a tank, I would say go very lightly stocked with maybe 2 or 3 fish. And get one of your family members to feed them occasionally. But if you have the time and you can do weekly maintenance, dedicate an hour or 2 a week at least, service those filters, vacuum, and do that kind of thing every week, then you'll be able to stock more heavily. But if you don't have the time for that kind of maintenance, don't stock your tank heavily, because you're going to have a buildup of waste and detritus, and you're going to have a spike in nitrates and who knows what else, and you're going to have problems. One of the things to consider in tanks that don't get vacuumed, or that the decor isn't moved to get under that decor, because I don't care how you have it set up, detritus gets under the decor, is that bacteria loves to grow on detritus. It grows on waste and fish poop, okay? And so if you have a lot of that there, you're giving a lot of home to bacteria. I'm not talking beneficial bacteria. I'm talking about the bacteria that turns into disease, like fin rot, on your fish. So at any rate, if you have the time, what kind of time are you going to be dedicating? So filtration, and how much time do you have? If you have a tight schedule, that's going to determine it. Feeding. This is going to be another key point. Are you going to be what some people call power feeding? I hear that term and I cringe a little bit. But if you're going to be feeding them a lot, you're going to need to do a lot of maintenance, and you're going to have a high maintenance requirement, and you're going to have a lot of waste. So how are you going to feed these fish? What kind of food are you going to be feeding them? Another thing to be considered, to consider. Think in terms of, this is point number 4 really, think in terms of a year. When you stock a tank, don't think in terms of the size of the fish that you're buying. People throw around this 1 inch per gallon rule. That's nonsense. Think in terms of a year. Where are these fish going to be in a year? The fish that you see in the tanks that I have, for example, if you look in this 100, there's a trout in there, a Malawi trout. There's a 3-spot torpedo, Exochromis anguinus. There's even the Maduka white lips and the star sapphire. These fish are going to outgrow this 100 and are going to have to go at some point into the 150 or some other large project. So think in terms of long term when you buy fish. What does that mean? That means research. That means just don't go and buy the pretty fish. Don't buy that catfish with the red tail because he's cute, because that catfish will get to 6 feet and 200 pounds, and you won't even be able to lift him. Unless you're Zenzo Tazawa. Okay, your space and your budget. Now this is important too. Look, when I started adding some fish that I knew were gonna get large, I already had in the works originally, if you go back a year or so, a 135-gallon tank. And then I had in the works 150. So think in terms of your budget and the space that you have and the relationship that you're in with your family and your wife. Make sure you have a green light, and if you have it, if you have a plan and a budget for that plan that you can move into larger tanks, then hey, go for it. Put a Venusis in a 75 or a 60 gallon, because you know that in 6 months you're going to have 150 up and running, or a 220 or a 300. That's good. That's a good plan. But if you know that you're limited in space and budget and everything else to that 60, then take that into consideration and stick with maybe some peacocks, maybe some Lethrinops, and maybe some of the smaller Placidochromis like the gazelles. And number 5, that was number 5, space, budget. I kind of blended them together. Growth of the fish, think in terms of a year. And number 5, of course, space and budget. How far do I want to go in this hobby? How much room do I have in the house that I have right now? And how much cooperation am I going to get from my family? So when you're approaching it, you have to, the American Indians, and I forget which tribe in particular, used to think in terms of they would think of time like a mountain. Think in terms of 7 generations, the impact of 7 generations. You don't have to go that far. Just think in terms of 1 year. Where are these fish, and where's my tank going to be in a year? Where am I going to be in the hobby in a year? And when you're stocking your tank, think that way. So when you're going to ask somebody, how many fish can I get into a 60-gallon, realize that there are many moving parts. It's not just one flash answer. It's not just 1 inch per gallon, go by 30 inches, go by 60 inches worth of fish. That is a very lazy and very irresponsible answer. The answer is, of course, do your research. Think in terms of where you're going to be in a year and a couple years from now. Think in terms of your budget, both in money and time, and then you can come up with a stocking strategy that actually is going to work for you. Now, I'm talking from experience. I've made the mistakes. I've bought fish that outran my ability to move into larger tanks, and I had to rehome them. And so, you know what? Learn from my stupid mistakes and save yourself some trouble. Okay, that's the whole purpose of my channel. Maybe to entertain you a little bit, you know, but also, you know, I want you to learn from the cul-de-sacs, the stupid paths that I've taken, and so you don't have to take them. Okay, so that's it for now, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in. Always appreciated. If you have any tips on how many fish you can get into a 60-gallon, share them below. I'd love to hear them, and of course the rest of the community would like to hear them as well. Okay, now I haven't put a plug in for a while. Come over to the Facebook group, Ben O Cichlid. That Facebook group is continuing to grow. It's very friendly, very informative. We have a zero troll tolerance, zero mean tolerance, and very informative, good for new fish keepers. Doesn't have to be cichlids. We'll help you with any kind of fish, and it's called Ben O Cichlid over on Facebook. You can also follow me on ben.o.cichlid on Instagram. I'm always posting pictures and stuff, and you know, I don't know why. I just do it. So. All right, thank you so much, folks. You are appreciated, and that's it for me for now.